This is our third documentary in the Anatomy of a Fraud series produced by InvestEd to help protect investors from investment fraud. Millions of people use online dating services in America today, and it's a legitimate way to establish relationships. But it is also a way for a con artist to find victims with promises, lies, seduction, and then disaster. The way it worked in this case was that the con artist would promise companionship, find out about the financial situation of the victims, and then tell them that he could make a lot more money than they were currently making by day trading through his individual accounts. In fact, he took the money and did not invest any of it, so the situation ended in an emotional and financial disaster for the victims. He not only broke their hearts, he broke their pocketbooks.
Con artists in either the community, civic groups, churches, it's usually a long-standing trust in cases we've seen, and then they eventually breach that trust.
This case was really cutting edge. It was 2003. You didn't really have many internet cases at that point. Since then, it has grown to be a large portion of our caseload where people meet people on the internet. But at the time, it was something that was new, and the dating websites weren't really viewed as where you would lose money through investments. And so he was really ahead of his time in trying to make that connection.
In Matthew McClintock's case, his victims were all female. He met them online, on these online dating type services. In many cases, the victims were vulnerable, had vulnerabilities. They had experienced a life-altering event, such as some were recently divorced, widowed, had health issues, and they had access to money.
He told women different ways that he was going to make them money, and if he had in reality created a day trading account for them, then they would have been getting statements and they would have been able to see some sort of activity in those accounts, when in reality all he ever did was take their monies, put them into his own personal account, and unfortunately lost all of the money that was ever given to him. In the case of Nancy Hunter from California, they met online, and he was very romantic to her in emails, and they struck up this connection through emailing.
I had a personal up on Yahoo, and I received an email from him, talking about my profile and trying to get in touch with me. He informed me that he did documentaries, and he in fact sent me a picture of him with his photograph equipment. He also told me that he worked out of his home as a day trader. I told him I was deeply in debt, partially due to my husband, and I was just trying to figure out a way how to move out and still be able to dig myself out. I think at one time, my daughter's education came up, and I had stated to him that I had an account set up for her, and I didn't know much about managing it. I didn't know how to invest it correctly to make it worth more or enough to put her through college. And he suggested that if we were going to become a family, that he would also invest in her college education. He knew all along that it was my daughter's college account, and how badly I was in debt and how I needed to try to figure out a way to dig out. And I thought that this was, he was offering me this perfect opportunity to get myself out of debt and to be able to rise above it all and get back on my feet. And actually, whether or not we had a personal relationship, was neither here nor there. I think for me, the whole idea was, I needed a way to get back on my feet.
She had an amount of about $10,000 in an IRA that she cashed out and sent him a check for that amount. She endorsed it over to him, and he deposited it into his bank account and used it.
He was going to take the money, put it in his Ameritrade account, and trade it daily, each day get out there and, work and try to trade it. And at first what we were going to do with the funds that he made off of it were to pay off my credit card debt and to get all of that gone and out of the way. And then any other funds after that time would be added to her college fund and would be, set back for that. And it never.
We only received one complaint at the beginning from Nancy Hunter, but after I subpoenaed the bank records from Matthew McClintock and our investigator compiled the financial analysis, I was able to see other victim names in that from checks that they had written or possibly a wire that had come in from someone's bank account. So it was easy to see victim names, and we just started contacting them from there. The department wrapped up its case by issuing an order against Matthew McClintock to cease the offer and sale of securities in Oklahoma. Then I notified Grady County that he was committing securities fraud. I thought they should be aware of that. The reason I did that was because I had done some research prior to taking the deposition of Matthew McClintock and found that Grady County had already prosecuted him for obtaining money under false pretenses. He was on a 4-year suspended sentence, and when I notified the district attorney down there about him committing the securities fraud, they filed charges against him again to bring him down to see if they couldn't prosecute him for violating his suspended sentence. And in turn, that was successful, and he did serve some time in the Grady County Jail. He left soon after he had served some time in a county jail here to go to Tennessee, and we knew that he had met someone in Tennessee that was falling for the same sort of scam that he'd pulled on the women here in Oklahoma.
I was on the internet. We started conversing on there, and his face was very pleasant and very kind looking on the picture that he had attached to the, to the profile. He said that he was a documentary film person and did things for PBS, and he had lived in Hawaii for a number of years and then was in Oklahoma. At that point, when we met, he was in Oklahoma making a documentary with some other people, and that he lived in the house with those people. And so he was quite busy, but then he also mentioned that he did day trading during the day. When he didn't have to go work on the film, he was a day trader, and he had done that for quite some time. And so then he began to say, well, if you leave, if you want me to, I can take, so much money a month and make it more for you. When he comes to Nashville, he has very little with him. And at first I didn't really recognize him because he didn't look to me like he did in the photograph. And if he hadn't been so tall, which I was expecting, then I might not have known who he was. But we talked, and I drove back to my home, and I said, well, he could stay in my daughter's room for, a few days if he was going to go on back. And so I let him do that, and he never left. Well, the fact that he, to me, physically presented very different than what he had talked to me about, that bothered me because it wasn't true. Very shortly afterward, his money got tied up, he said. And he explained to me that he was in some kind of legal problem with some attorneys and some guys that had produced a documentary with him before, and they had infringed on some. Anyway, it got into a big deal, and that's not my expertise, so I can't really go there, but he had a big story. It sounded legitimate to somebody who wouldn't know all that much, and so when he said he didn't have any money at that point, he stayed, and he kept saying it should be freed in a couple of weeks.
We became aware of that victim through a coworker of hers. A coworker of hers had contacted authorities, concerned that her boss had met a guy online. He had moved in with her, and they were concerned that a lot of the stories he was telling her weren't true, and there were just some red flags.
He came in, and we met him one day, And he also said he was a photographer. So I was asking him questions about that and all, and I asked him what kind of a camera he had, and he told me, and then I asked him, did he have it with him? And he said, no, I don't have it with me. It's back in Oklahoma. And I said, why not? I said, I don't go anywhere without my camera, especially to a different state where I'm going to be, so I can shoot photos. Well, he had an answer for that, and then, so I asked him what he'd been doing, that day, and he said, out looking at a boat. And I said, oh, what kind of boat? Because I know a little bit about boats. And, oh, just a boat. And he couldn't give me a definite answer, and he kept looking away from me every time I'd ask him anything. So I was like, what's up with this guy? Why can he not give me a straightforward answer? And I immediately started looking for him on the internet. He's supposed to be this big documentary filmmaker, supposed to have done all these things, and I could not find him. And that's when I really got scared, because I'm like, why are you not on here? Why have you done all this stuff that you said you've done and you're not on the internet anywhere? I mean, everybody's pretty much on the internet now. And I couldn't find him.
Subsequent to all of the women between Oklahoma and Tennessee and serving time in Oklahoma prisons, he did go to Montana, where he committed a new type of scam up there, but the department no longer had an active case at that point.
McClintock's profile as a serial fraud con artist. He has taken it to a very polished, very involved, intricate level. He's not a run-of-the-mill person that, Hollywood likes to portray on TV shows, where the person's, selling wristwatches, from his, overcoat on a street corner or in an alleyway. His MO was primarily the investment advertising for children's programs.
At an age when my shafts were taller than I was, I liked it when Mom and Dad read me stories about cowboys, horses, and the wide open range. Well, from the looks of it, those stories sure enough made an impression. Memories made reading to a child leave lasting impressions. Books, children, Mom and Dad, a winning combination.
I know when he left Montana, he started up one for breast cancer victims. And he would then, again, try to sell this advertisement for businesses. If they want to join in, he would advertise their company. They then would be supporting this worthy cause, which, of course, didn't exist. McClintock would, in a number of times, if the victims start getting antsy, or if he felt he needed another prop, as I mentioned earlier, he would use the props as ammunition to continue on with his scams. He would try to use them as convincing documentation to show that he is legitimate. Hey, this is the quality work I'm doing. He actually made several DVD, fairly well put together commercials. They starred himself. He would be the primary actor in these commercials. He portrayed himself as a cowboy in Montana. In addition to that, going back to his investment strategy days from Oklahoma, he had some sort of investment strategy expertise that he would sell on people in Montana. He would solicit females online for companionship. He would look for someone who is single, maybe in their 50s or 60s. They've either had a divorce or a husband who's passed away, and so he would solicit them for companionship. He looked for a victim dependent on what that victim could offer him, whether it's their good credit, whether it's their name, a vehicle he could use, a place where he could stay, investment money that he could convince these people to give him. He would then, of course, burn it all up, and these people would get no return. It would depend on where he was looking and what he needed at the time.
Sometimes a victim in a fraud case, even though they know they are dealing with a fraudster, will go ahead with the investment anyway, thinking in their minds, well, I know he's a scoundrel, but he won't do this to me. Matter of fact, it can't happen to me. In this case, in fact, it did.
The man has a potential to be a productive citizen. He's not dumb. I mean, some things he is, I guess, but he is intelligent in a lot of ways, and he just didn't use any of it the way he could have and would have done very well. But he honestly believes that he's telling the truth. I've stood and watched him. He doesn't flinch to tell you, he really doesn't. And I just think he has himself convinced that he's a good guy.
It's a sad state. He's a sad person, but like I said, he's good at what he does. He's a con man, and that's the bottom line. And he's taken a lot of people's money, and he was doing it here also. And had, from what I gathered, has taken quite a bit in just the short amount of time that he was here.
I was stupid enough to fall into the hole, and I saw the red flags. I let my emotions override my intelligence. I knew about the police record even before I sent him the $10,000 check, and I still sent it, knowing, but, the emotions got in the way. The heart was, overrode what my head told me to do.
So, the point to be learned is this. Don't give up your common sense when your mind tells you something's wrong. Don't let your heart or your wishes control the outcome.
Well, I think Ronald Reagan once said it, trust but verify. There are a number of opportunities that I think the public has out there now that helps fight fraud. The internet was a great tool in order to research people.
Check with your state securities regulator to find out if the person making the offering is a registered securities professional or if the offering itself is registered, and whether or not there's a history of profit or loss. If not, that should be a red flag, which would lead you to question why the person is not registered. Be sure to rely on the old adage, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.